Oh, but we're starting early. We're starting early. I still had time on the counter. I still had like 5 minutes. Still had 5 minutes. Well, that's okay. That's all right. Let me set up here so I can see what's going on in chat. Looks like there's one person watching. How you doing? Today, doing a little thing. We're kicking around a little bit of news that came out, and we're going to look at James 2 and probably keep looking at James 2 because, probably in addition to pointing out just how the people who take James 2 and put it into Old Testament, or they want to fast forward it and say it's about Jews and tribulation, or they want to do whatever, or attach works to salvation or whatever. I mean, the best thing to do is probably to just go through it and keep applying it to, what it actually really means so that, people can get it through their heads about James 2, not talking about salvation in the spiritual sense of, we're dealing with people. And when you're talking about James 2 in respecter of persons, and you're talking about works and clothing and feeding people and things like that, we're not talking about saved and going to heaven type stuff. We're talking about what's going on the planet. We talk about Abraham being justified by putting his son up there, going to sacrifice him. It's like, well, yeah, he's justified to people because God knew he was going to do that. Right. So I want to talk about that and some other things as people kind of gather up. Hey, Nick. Hey, random guy. We're going to cover some news first. I don't know, people have probably heard about, especially if you're in like, a sort of what's quote unquote a truth or movement. I don't know that I would classify myself as that, because I typically would send that over to the Alex Jones type. We all think that guy's a clown because he offers no solutions to anything. He just says, look at all this bad stuff going on. Fear, fear, fear. Buy my cereal or whatever he happens to be selling. And I've watched his show for a year, maybe even 2 years, long time ago in the early 2000 or like 2008, 2010-ish, something like that. And he's been asked several times about, well, what's the solution to these problems? And his answer was always, well, my responsibility is to bring this information forward and to scare the crap out of everybody. And it's like, well, after a while that gets kind of stressful. And yeah, if you're not providing any solutions, there's no point in bringing up all of these terrible things that are happening, right? So talk about a little bit about these different things. So, the whole thing is, what it comes down to with that is, the New World Order is coming. The New World Order is coming, and look at this and look at that. Look at what they're implementing. It's like, guys, we're already in the New World Order system. Okay. Just acknowledge that it exists, but don't worry about it too much. Just go do the right thing and go, show the faith, do the James 2 thing, right? Faith without works is dead. And we'll talk about that after I talk about the Netflix thing and the FBI thing or whatever. We're going to get the crud out of the way and then move on to good things. Okay. Because it's really, with all the stuff going on right now, there's no point in like dwelling on garbage. Acknowledge it exists. See the inversion tactics. Everything is an inversion, right? The more money you have in your wallet, the more debt you actually have because they represent debt. Abortion is family planning, right? Planned Parenthood. I mean, come on. It's all inversion. As long as you see the inversion and acknowledge it exists, then that's what's important. So let's see who we got here. Well, we got a whole bunch. Isn't Alex Jones Bill Hicks? So the story says. There's all kinds of entertainment news like that, like replacing all these people with different people. It's like, I don't know. I think it's entertaining. Who's the black comedian guy? Dave Chappelle. That guy looks nothing like what he did 15 years ago when he got thrown off the television. There's interesting stuff like that. That's fun stuff. That's just, entertainment. A lot of what's going on, like right now, you can see these things happening for what they are and take them as kind of an entertainment. And take comfort in the fact that you know what's going on, and don't get all stressed out about things like, they're going to come stomping, kicking down your door and jab a needle in you for vaccines and stuff. That's not going to happen. It's going to happen like they're paying people more to be on unemployment now than they would be if they're working. Well, what they're going to do is say, in order to stay on this type of unemployment, you have to do this, or you have to do that, and you have to do this and this. And the people who voluntarily go to do all that stuff are the people that's for. They're not going to go kicking indoors and forcing people to do whatever. It's just not going to happen. That's something that you make up in your own mind and cause stress, and don't need to worry about that. Okay. So what's going on as the most recent stuff? A few days ago, FBI tweeted out, just for the heck of it, the protocols of Elder Zion. Now, for people who have never read this thing, it's basically the setup for the Zion Grabbler guys and what they intended to do and what their big plans for world domination and all this stuff was back in like 1900. Okay, I read this a long time ago and kind of go through it now, and it's like how terribly anti-Semitic it is and supposedly proved to be a hoax. So say the Jews, right? Okay, whatever. It's just interesting that it gets tweeted out, and it's like, is this a thing to try and divert attention and get us angry at them for something? To try and misdirect? Because this document's been around 100 years, right? It's not a secret. It's just really strange that the government would link to the PDF document for the Elder Zion whatever thing. I suggest that people read it, but and understand and see, like, they call it an anti-Semitic hoax, but then you read it and you're like, oh, well, that's exactly what's going on. So you need to take into like the Creature from Jekyll Island, the International Monetary Fund, where our wars are and what's going on with that, and the structure of society and all those things. It kind of lines up. And is it designed and put out there specifically to get you mad and thinking about that? And, we've got to get these guys or something. Don't think like that. Just, be aware of it. I mean, this is just a fantasy idea document that's put out there as was apparently meeting notes for the people who get together, like the Bilderbergers and them guys, right? Who decide how they're going to, what they're going to do with all the cattle on the planet. And it's one of them kind of things, It's just weird the FBI would just put that out. I don't know, but it kind of coincides with, are they distracting you from something when you also have these things out here? And this is a type of marketing tool where we have Netflix out here released a lot of the stuff they release is garbage. It's very LGBTQ, whatever. A lot of racy content on Netflix. And I always kind of looked at it like, well, it's like the internet. You can find anything on the internet, right? The internet isn't pro this, pro that. Whatever people want to consume it's going to have a lot of that type of content, like pornography. If a lot of people are into porn, there's going to be a lot of porn providers out there on the internet. The internet is just the service and the tool. Netflix, to me, was just a streaming service, right? And they buy up large packages of content from different production areas just so they have something to stream. And they're going to have it for every country in the world. Whatever people want to watch, it's going to be on there. And it's up to you to decide what you're going to watch. However, they recently did more like a marketing thing where they knew that a certain program they had was going to offend Christians or offend people or whatever. And it has to do with like an 11-year-old girl's discovery, breaking away from her parents and like dancing or something, or beauty queen thing or something like that. I've seen the advertisement or the picture of it and people getting all bent out of shape about it, but I didn't know much else. But people asked Netflix if they supported pedophilia, and Netflix said they couldn't answer that question. What? I mean, it was a direct thing. It says right here, how does a movie sexualizing children get approved? Who signed off on this? Netflix says, we understand that not all the stories may appeal to all of our viewers, which is why we always invest in a diverse range of content from all over the world. We also provide ratings, synopses, trailers, and controls to help our members make the right viewing choices for themselves and their families. Yeah, puts the responsibility on the person who's choosing the content. But then the person says, do you support pedophilia? A simple answer, yes or no. And they say, we cannot really comment on that. Well, pedophilia is against the law. It's a total against the law, found to be objectively, morally wrong between Christians, atheists, everybody. And Netflix is like, there's some pedophiles out there. We don't mind taking their money. We're just catering to them. Okay, that's a problem. Okay, that's a problem. That's now you're no longer under the cover of we're just putting out content for everybody. Now it's, well, we can't say that pedophilia is bad. Okay, there's a difference there. There's a difference there. So it started as a media stunt. They're like, well, this will probably make Christians mad, and that'll be good for us because there's people out there who look for content that's, oh, if the Christians are mad, then I got to check this out. Right? But then it's kind of backfiring as they responded to a thing and they couldn't answer yes or no to whether or not they support pedophilia. If you don't say, no, you don't support pedophilia, it means that, yes, you do. Okay. That's what it means. So they're, it's kind of going to be a problem for them. I mean, but right now they think they can do what they want because they have a monopoly. They're not in competition with Hollywood or people going to see movies or anything like that. So, it'd be interesting what happens with this. But yeah, just it's one of those things, now this company is actively promoting that stuff. It's not just that they happenstance have a whole lot of LGBTQ, whatever. They're actively promoting it. And yeah, just kind of a heads up. And this comes from, Reformation Charlotte. So I'm guessing it's a Christian sort of a thing, but I also want to cover the other side of this of who is reporting this. This is an article you can find on a lot of different places, but I thought this was interesting. We'll go through the Reformation Charlotte. If you just click their tag, it brings up this page, and we'll look at some of the stuff that it has here, and we'll just take a look at it with they're always going to try to incite emotions and all that with it, and just try and look at things logically and from a moral standpoint. Okay. So our article here, University of Houston police tell preacher campus is no longer public because pandemic. Okay, well, who cares? This is a big deal to the Christian people who put this stuff out here, but it's like, well, why are you a university anyway? It's a scam. Aren't you telling the people it's a scam? And it's not a pandemic? Christian University asked students not to attend in-person church services. Oh, how could a Christian university not, because it's not their narrative. That's like, they'll say whatever. Just because they say they're a Christian university organization does not make them Christian. I can legally say my name is Dr. Max Bauer when I'm using it as a promotional content or a pseudonym. I can write a book and say written by Dr. Max Bauer. Okay, that's totally legal. Oh, well, you're conning people. Well, Christian University, those two should never go hand in hand. John MacArthur, our favorite guy out here, Mr. Calvinist, explains why Christians can't vote Democrat. Did you know that? Christians can't vote Democrat, according to John MacArthur. Trump calls to thank him for taking a stand for religious freedom. So you can't be a Christian if you vote Democrat, and that is religious freedom. The nonsense articles, right? Just don't even engage with this stuff. Just see it for what it is. That's completely contradictory statement. Christian freedom, you can't vote Democrat and be a Christian, but your freedom. Right. John MacArthur files declaration against LA County for depriving Christians of spiritual refuge. How could anybody possibly deny a Christian of spiritual refuge? What this really means is John MacArthur is mad because they won't let his people come give him money at his building, is what that is. He calls that spiritual refuge. It's nonsense. Something about hymns, psalters can do and hymnals can't. I don't know anything about that. Our Netflix article. Los Angeles public schools already teaching Black Lives Matter curriculum in online schools. Well, why is that surprising? These people are all like up in it. Can you believe it? Can you believe that Black Lives Matter? It's like, what do you expect? And why are your kids in public schools? See, this is all this. This is the Alex Jones thing. These media sites of like, look at all this terrible stuff. Can you believe it? Now go home and feel bad. It's like, well, why are your kids in public schools? Why would it matter? What do you expect them to do? Of course they're going to do that. Do you realize what they teach kids in school these days? It's ridiculous. Sex ed and masturbation and all that stuff in grade school. Ridiculous. Black Lives Matter church burned down by Black Lives Matter rioters. Yeah. You don't hear about that on the news because it doesn't fit the narrative. Why would they? I mean, there's no reason to be surprised about any of this stuff. They put it out there like it's a big deal. Look, everybody knows what's going on. The real trick is out there is the psyop of, controlling the narrative. Jerry Falwell, I don't know who that is. Podcast, When Love Your Neighbor Becomes Tyranny. What do you think that's about? I didn't even really want to find out. But that's one of those, what do you call them? Clickbaits. I'm going to guarantee you, because of the inversion that we live in today, what they mean by love your neighbor is not what love your neighbor really means. It's probably the exact opposite. Okay. SBC's Lifeway selling Gen Z translation of Bible that makes a mockery of God's word. Well, you're just now deciding that this one Bible you don't like. Just this one. And they still capitalize Bible even though they acknowledge that it's a mockery of God's word. Interesting. It's all upside downy. All upside down, topsy-turvy. We'll get into fun stuff with James too, and a little bit more positive. I mean, all this stuff goes on, and nobody likes all the sodomy stuff, and nobody likes all the pedo stuff and the Netflix, and nobody likes all this nasty crap. But if you go in and say that you don't agree with these positions, you have all of these troll robots that come in to make all of these comments like, you're a nutcase. And, the guys, that's not the narrative. It's all AI now. Okay. It's all AI. So be careful with who you're arguing with on occasionally they come in on my videos or other people's videos. Just careful who you're arguing with. If they're coming in there with a completely illogical, idiotic statement, they're just trolls. A lot of them are AI, just in there to mess with people, to get them off of being concentrated on whatever the message may happen to be. So I covered that. And I will say, once you understand the inversion of everything and just stick with what's moral and what's true, and just worry about that, then there's amazing opportunity right now where as businesses are closing up, it's somewhere between 25% and 50% of businesses that are temporarily closed for our little virus thing that we got. Like between 25 and 50% of temporary closed businesses are staying closed permanently. And this is all a big grab where you have guys like Amazon, Netflix, Walmart, are all have record-breaking quarters when everybody else is going out of business, right? And you could say, oh, well, you can go, oh my gosh, it's terrible. The New World Order taking over. And it's like the New World Order's been taken over for a long time. Okay. It's been going on for 100 years at least. So what you have to do is, instead of just feeling bad and there's nothing you can do, is just go do your thing, live moral, spread truth, Okay. And look for opportunities. Okay. Look for opportunities. And if you're reliant on the system in some place, try to break away from the system. Now, Trump is probably going to push through a thing where everyone's going to get more relief money and all this. And instead of buying lollipops and things with that money, use it to get more freedom for yourself and being less reliant and dependent. And of course, build communities and whatnot. It's always a great thing, and you can live in, obviously the best thing to do is get a place where you can have animals or something like that and have a little bit of land where there isn't always some regulator out there waiting to send you, where's your permit? That kind of stuff. But that's not obviously available to everybody. But having communities and close-knit communities and neighborhoods and things like that, you can exist without having to worry about what the state is doing and what the media is doing and this garbage they're trying to ram down your throat, just like a little China, right? Your big city and you got little China where all the Chinese people live, right? And they just go about their own customs and their own thing, and they don't worry about what all this New World Order crap is and what the Zionist grabblers, who I'll refer to as ZGs, okay? The ZGs, and what they want to do, it really doesn't matter, because a lot of that stuff is pretty well all, you have to volunteer for that stuff, okay? You have to volunteer for it. And, there's going to be nobody kicking down your doors, jabbing you with needles and stuff, and that's how it is, how it's going. So inversion. So what did I watch? Oh, yes. Talking about waking people up and stuff, which, I've been more or less awoken to stuff that's been going on for over 10 years quite easily. But the important thing is not waking people up or getting woke up. It's the important thing is like getting out of bed. Is the statement. I think Owen Benjamin said that. And it's something that I try to do, like with my last stream about, solutions to the things that are going to be coming up or going on in, particularly America, as they kind of restructure the economy, and who knows what they want to do with their little scam pandemic thing. Right. But, the important thing is just not being aware to things. It's about being able to do something, whatever it may be. And this is where I'm going to get into, faith without works is dead. Right. It's one thing to know it, but you got to do something with it. Right. Otherwise, you're just going to sit in misery. You're going to be the Alex Jones thing of like, what do I have to buy now to make me feel better? The world is caving in. And it's like, that's doesn't do anybody any good. Saying certain things are wrong or morally incorrect or illogical or garbage or something is acting out the faith and standing for truth. Who is truth? Jesus Christ. Okay, so I'll check out chat here and we'll get into James 2. Did I see the vax survey results? 70% of people say no to vax. Yeah, I'm not surprised. There's a lot of different information about what they're got all these ideas on all these different vaccines. Well, the thing is that, this pandemic virus they say is out there. It doesn't exist. Okay. And a lot of people will disagree with me on that, but guess what? It's a lot easier to lie about something that doesn't exist than something that actually does exist. And what they're proven to be testing for is one of your chromosome formations, one of your DNA segments is what they're actually testing for. So like everybody could test positive. Okay. Everybody. And viruses are what comes out of your own body and your own cells. Viruses are not alive. They reproduce and reform in your own cells. They're not bacteria. Bacteria are a living entity that reproduces and makes people sick. Viruses come from inside people. How all that works, not really sure, but they come from inside people. That's where they come from. Yeah. So what they're testing for, the test is not designed to actually tell who's sick with your virus. The test is designed to look for a specific gene code, right? And it turns out the test is actually corresponds to one of your chromosomes. So there's a couple of ideas out there with the vax thing, or one of them is the vax is going to go attack your chromosomes. And it's like, I don't think so. What's probably the most likely thing is that the vaccine is just going to be a placebo, and it's just a way to charge people and steal a bunch of money from them. And I think that because I don't think that the ZGs are smart enough or capable enough to actually make something that could actually hurt people. I don't think they're smart enough to do that, to target a specific chromosome. You know, there's most of the stuff that you get from what these supposed New World Order guys are doing is so ridiculous and outlandish. No, it's just not possible. I think that that's part of the fear thing. Is we have all these great weapons and our military this, and they can see through your walls with the helicopter thing. And I think a lot of it is nonsense. That's just there to make people scared and make people in awe and subservient to the government. Sure, they have some better stuff than what people naturally have, but you cannot get creativity out of a system like that, where no one is rewarded for doing good stuff. No, it has to come from individual people that have ideas and visions, and that's where creativity, Satan doesn't have creativity. The whole Satan system, the New World, there isn't any creativity in it. All they can do is twist it and corrupt it and destroy it. So you need free, creative people out there to even have anything to begin with. So I think a lot of that, I think it's going to be a placebo. And they're going to charge the government $6 a shot and placebo everybody, because if they actually had something in it and people got sick and hurt, that would mess up their plans. What you want to do is shoot everybody up with something, charge a whole bunch of money or whatever the currency is at the time, and make everybody happy and feel safe that, the government's protected us, right? That's the idea. I mean, we already know the group that this is going for. Younger generation really doesn't care about it. They're kind of just following along. We know who it is. I just don't see it in a mass thing like that. Now, there are certain countries where, man, I don't know, in Australia, what them guys got going on. But they're saying all kinds of weird stuff. And I'm always on the wait until something actually happens, because people can say a lot of stupid stuff and the news can make a huge rhetoric thing out of it and try and rile up the beast and the nations and the people of, how can you believe this is so terrible, they're doing this and all this stuff. But until somebody actually does something, I just look at it as like marketing in the media, just like I think the thing was like Cuties, Netflix. Yeah. Cuties. Just like that. Just a marketing ploy to rile up the people and get your name out there. That's how I look at a lot of this stuff. 70% aren't going to vaccine. A lot of people say that that's their line in the sand too, is the vaccinations. And it's like, there is, if you already haven't crossed your line in the sand, I don't know what difference the vaccination is going to make. Because there's people that, if I was on unemployment, I'd be making a lot more money. We'll just put it that way. Just the $600 a week or whatever. I haven't made that much in a long time. So now you have people that are going to get used to that. And they're just going to say, well, if you want to keep getting that, you're going to have to get your shot or whatever. Well, then they're just going to go get their shot. I mean, that's how they're going to do it. There isn't any forced mandatory mandated this, that, and the other thing. And, and when your people want to talk about their private businesses and things like that, or where you go to work, you'll have to cross that bridge when you come to it. That's how I look. I mean, there are ways out of that too. It's not going to make you very popular at the workplace, I can tell you that, but there's ways to go about all this stuff. But the main thing is like for the general population, you're thinking like, If they mandate vaccinations, that would be for children and everybody else too, you know, just people. But they're going to do it by, if you want your lollipops, you're going to have to get the vaccine, or it's probably be something before. That's probably going to be, if you want your lollipops, you have to get your credit card with the government chip in it. That's going to tie your food stamps and your lollipops and whatever else. Going to be on your chip. I mean, it's going to be a slow rollout, and people are going to volunteer for it. So yeah, that's the old vaxing things. CJPWI, there is no pandemic. Exactly true. And you know, I'm done really sort of being mad at, like, well, I don't know that I'll ever not be mad about the boomer generation. Okay. But if it's mainly the people who want to be masked, Fauci could come out and say that, okay, we're all done. We don't need masks anymore. Everyone, we're safe enough and good enough where we don't need the masks. They'd still be wearing masks because they like masks. It makes them help feel better to cover their shame. All right. A certain group of people out there that are really into that. So I'm kind of done being mad about it. But if you don't see it now, it's been like almost 8 months of nonsense. And you look at the statistics, the total deaths worldwide are down over this is the lowest they've been in like 20 years. 20 years ago, there was billions more people on the planet. Okay. This isn't a per capita. This is total. So the numbers just don't add up, just like the old global warming thing when we've been cooling for 20 years. We're in a solar minimum cycle. We've been cooling. You're still going to hear about global warming, right? That's the same sort of nonsense. And if you don't want to accept the fact that it's a hoax and it doesn't exist, there's nothing I can do for you. Go get your shot. Okay. Go off and go do that. And tell people how righteous you are for protecting grandma by getting the shot and wearing your mask. Yeah. Found it, Nick. You found the link? Yeah. Yeah. Put whatever links you want in there, and I'll double check my spam filterage. Once again, you know, their biggest way to try and quiet people like me is discouragement. Is how the B system is attacking me, is discouragement, because I'm literally watching them delete comments as they're being posted. They show up in my little bell, and then I go to the video to respond, and they're not there. So it's like discouraging. I have been at 5,150 subscribers for over 2 years now. The exact same. I'm not losing any, not gaining any. Right. So I know what's going on. That's not going to stop me. It gets discouraging, but I ain't going to stop. You know when it starts giving me subscribers? If I don't upload for a month, then all of a sudden I gain like 100, 200. Yeah. And then I start posting again and it goes right back down. The B system. Oh, YouTube. They want to tag us. People are already tagged. Most of Gen X, they take your blood when you're born. So they've got everybody's DNA. Whether or not the DNA actually lasts, is preserved and is actually useful for that amount of time, I'm not sure. A lot of people think that those tests are a DNA grab because they certainly don't test for anything. The person who invented the test, the PCR thing up the nose thing, he says they don't test for if you have the illness or not. So I don't know what they're doing. I mean, it's, you could say money scam, but a lot of it is to cover up the crumbling economy, but they're really pushing it, at least maybe until Trump gets elected. Then they'll start easing out of it. I don't know, but it's pretty much an economy scam. I mean, we're 30, Trump, the great guy who was going to drain the swamp and do all these wonderful things and clean out government and all that, has actually like doubled the national debt in 4 years, which took Obama the entire 8 years to do. Trump did it in 4. And apparently by the time he's by the time 2024 or 2028, they said they are estimated like an $80 trillion debt. So it's ridiculous. It's meaningless at that point. Meaningless. Links in this chat will not show up right away unless you're a mod. Nick, I thought you were a mod. You're not a mod. There. Now you can post a link. If you catch any robot trolls, just go ahead and ban them. People that think things like chemtrails are a conspiracy theory. Well, it's interesting that people, I mean, conspiracy theory has such a connotation to it. It's odd because there are so many demonstrable, provable. I mean, conspiracy theory is generally regarded in today's vernacular as an evil deed perpetrated by a government or a group of powerful people or something. We'll just use that definition, even though that's not really what it is. And that is fact. It's fact. I mean, you know, and as far as chemtrails, there are a lot of people who say, oh, those are the vapor trails or whatever from condensation. And it's like, yes, sometimes they are. That's true. But when you see them playing tic-tac-toe in the sky, that isn't regular jet traffic. That and jets, they fly. They're not hot. They're not rockets. They're shooting compressed air. They hardly use any fuel at all when they get up to cruising speed. They're self-maintaining a vortex. That's how they work. So yes, you do have contrails and things, but they go away pretty quick because it's compressed air that's, you know, slightly hotter than the temperature that's outside. You still have tic-tac-toe in the sky that's still there like 8 hours later. That is not just condensation. Yeah. But anyways, on that note, at least in my area, I have not seen any of that going on for quite some time. So I'm actually happy and thankful for that. That I think that program, not to mention that whole program of seeding the sky and all that is a declassified program that you can Google anywhere. That it is a thing that's designed to blanket out the sun for greenhouse whatever nots. I mean, that's what the story is behind that. So it's not even classified. And countries control the weather. Okay. That's not a secret either. It's not a conspiracy. It's a war crime to do it over someone else's country. But if you do it over your own, just fine. So that started in the 90s. You can look all that stuff up. But anyways, a conspiracy, the actual factual term is just a plot between two or more people. So I started a corporation in preparation for the opportunities as I'm going to look for that are going to be coming up as kind of society crumbles and the government's, you know, running out of money and all this stuff. And I thought it'd be beneficial to have an entity separate from myself that can work in that environment without threatening myself. Right. But in order to do that, you have to have multiple people on there as president, vice president, treasurer, and then you have to have a board of directors. Okay. That's a conspiracy that is required. Okay. To form any corporation. So conspiracy is not always bad. Sometimes it's a necessary tool. Via email about satanic elite planning to exterminate the American people. Random guy. I don't think. Oh, you just did it now. Okay, well, I'll have to check it out later. I've already been going for almost an hour, and I still haven't even covered James 2 in the fun part yet. Yeah, Nick, and I'll check out your article. Yeah, they seed the clouds to bring... Yeah, you know, there's a lot of... Really, weather modification and chemtrails are not a conspiracy. They're declassified. The government tells you that they do it. All right. Weather modifications, not a thing. What do you think HARP does? It heats up the dome to change the weather patterns and create high pressure zones and move weather. That's what it does. Okay. It's not a secret. The secret and the conspiracy aspect of it is when you control the weather like that, what if you're trying to get certain laws passed and there's certain states that aren't playing ball, and you start making the weather real tough on them? That's where the conspiracy comes in. Or what if a certain branch of agriculture in a certain area doesn't want to play ball with GMO, Monsanto, blah, blah, blah. You can cause some weather. Who controls the weather stuff? Okay, that's where the conspiracy comes into it, not the fact that it exists. But once again, the fact weather modification exists is like the internet. It's just a tool. Okay, it's just a tool. Who's in charge of it and what they're doing with it is a totally different thing. And that's all pure speculation, but not the fact that that stuff exists. You can pay the Russian government right now. If you're holding the Olympics in Russia, the Olympic Commission pays them to make sure that it's sunny. You can actually search the article. Russia controls weather. Russia stops snow or rain or whatever it was for the Olympics. I mean, yeah, they pay them to do that. This isn't unheard of secret technology. Been doing it for a long time. Forcing farmers into bankruptcy. Well, the ideal for what they're going for now is destroying the economy to the point where you've got to reboot it with something and then going to a digital currency. And then once you're attached to a digital currency, you can turn that on and off at will to make people compliant, right? And obviously that sounds terrible. However, a lot of people in the initial stages of it, people are going to be getting rich, doing nothing and just signing up for government programs, right? And then they'll get dependent on that to the point where they'll eventually do something or the government just decides they don't want to feed them anymore and just turn their switch, and then they don't get any more money, and then they're going to be in bad shape. So that's where all of this stuff is going. So I'm just saying, acknowledging that this stuff is going to be taking place sometime, limit your vulnerabilities in that regard. Form communities and relationships, and try to, as best you can, not have any dealings with the government. Okay. That's how it is, and not be too concerned about all these, because the world's been falling apart for a long time since the beginning. It just kind of goes in cycles, and then you have a renaissance. And the thing is just being aware of it and not trying to hold on to like, oh, how can we fix it? How can we fix it? It's like, don't worry about that. You do you. Keep your chin up. You do you. And, explain to people is like, don't accept nonsense as reality. Don't accept this idea that morality is relative to what you feel like doing is your moral code. That's not true. Just for simply saying that there is a right and there is a wrong and there is a moral truth is saying God is real. God controls everything. That's what it means. That's why people don't want to accept it. That's why they want to be moral relativists and atheists and all this other stuff. Yeah. Michael A, 2018. Well, congratulations. Nick, controlling food supply. Yeah, it's the main way. That's how they're going to get everybody, because they forced everybody into cities by the bright lights and everything, all of the convenience of a city. That's what it is. The whole last 50 years has been marketing convenience and selling convenience to everybody, to the point where nobody does anything in this country for themselves anymore. Yeah. So we hire every foreigner we possibly can to do everything for us, have machines to do everything for us. And it's all about convenience. And it's really hard to give up your convenience and go out and not have internet and live in the woods somewhere where you have to slaughter chickens and collect eggs and cut firewood. Okay. It's hard to do that, especially when you think you need money for this stuff. And I suppose you always will need it for like taxes for your property or whatever you have, It always got you somewhere. The whole point is just like limiting your stuff. So anyways, James 2. James 2, for anyone unaware, is the area in the Bible that everyone has problems with because they don't know how to read and they're not very logical people. And Ruckman has this idea. James 2 is to Jews in the time of tribulation or something, and it relates back to the Old Testament, that's a really dumb idea. Other people in what we would determine as to be cults, and what determines a cult is saying they're Christian, but really their message or gospel of salvation is based on something that somebody has to do. It's a work, because that's how you make money, is you make people feel bad and make them do work. That's how you get money. So that is a false religion. That's the defining part between what's a cult and what's not a cult. There's some ones out there that, you know, a cult is a pretty strong word to use for them, but they're widely regarded as a cult. You know, one of those ones on the cusps is going to be Seventh-day Adventism. Some of their people teach doctrine that's obviously heretical and cultish, and then some other ones are kind of like, meh, I disagree with your opinion, you know, that sort of a thing. I disagree with your opinion, and this is why I think you're wrong, but whatever. I try to, you know, rather than go around and these people are crazy, these are crazy, these are crazy, these are crazy, you know, point out their error, but you know, I'm gonna chill on a lot of that, because there's a lot more important things to deal with than who's a heretic. I mean, if one of your traditions actively is involved going against the teachings of the Bible, like the Catholic Church, well, obviously, then you're asking for it. So, yes, James 2. How do you like today? I'm blue. My old camera just doesn't know what to do. If I turn all the lights off, then I'm sitting in darkness, but I'm the right color. Whatever, blue works. My brethren, have not the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, Lord of glory, with respect of persons. For if there come unto your assembly a man with a gold ring, in goodly apparel, and there come in also a poor man in vile raiment, and ye have respect to him that weareth the gay clothing, and say unto him, sit thou here in a good place, and say to the poor, stand thou there, or sit here under my footstool, then ye are not partial in yourselves, and become judges of evil thoughts. Partial in yourselves, and become judges of evil thoughts. There's your respecter of persons thing, which relates back to morality, truth, and lies. Okay, people put, you know, rock stars or particularly like sporting figures and things like that up high on this pedestal as though they have anything to say. And we know, because Twitter was invented, that these people have nothing to say. Nothing. But because they are who they are, they deserve a special place in your house. It's not, because what is money anyway? Is that really where your riches come from? Debt notes that are so inverted, the more of them you have in your wallet, the more in debt you are? I don't know. Verse 5, hearken, my beloved brethren, hath not God chosen the poor of this world rich in faith, and heirs of the kingdom which he hath promised to them that love him? Rich in faith. The poor of this world, rich in faith. So we were talking about money, physical, material stuff, because we're talking to the Jews, right, who are very into that stuff. So are Americans, though, right? Of these things of, well, they must have a higher social status because they have more debt. Literally. Okay, this is not figurative. Yeah, there are rich people and there are poor people, but most of the time you see someone driving a fancy car, they're just more in debt than you. But then you want to covet some nice car that they have, or their big house that they're probably going to lose because they can't go to work because of COVID, right? It's more important than that is be rich in faith, rich in truth, rich in faith in Jesus, rich in faith in truth, morality. There's where you're going to get your blessings. Not from the sports figure who runs his mouth on Twitter, or somebody who's got a nicer car, or is really big into the next new this, that, or the other thing. What used to be iPhones or something, where people would wait for days to get the new iPhone that just came out like 6 months after the last iPhone came out. Just had to get it. Then you're supposed to be like, oh, you just have an iPhone 7. I have an iPhone 8 or whatever they're up to. And you get to judge people's social status based on the phone that they have. That's what they're talking about, people. Right? I don't have any social status or money, but look at me. I get to be on the internet and talk to 5,150 people exactly for the last 2 years. But ye have despised the poor. Do not rich men oppress you and draw you out before the judgment seats? So he's talking to people who have a caste system where these are the obvious poor people. They can sit in the corner. Here's some people with some money. And if I'm nice to them, I'm going to get something in return because they have money. The poor people don't have anything that I need or want, right? This is how this whole thing works. So we're going to have the best seat in the house goes not just because he's a guest, but because he's a guest with money. And then the guests that don't have any money, they can go over there and, they can sit with the dogs. But James goes around here and it says, well, don't the rich people do the same thing to you? The people that are richer than the people he's speaking to, they do the exact same thing to them. And shows how foolish it is. Because do they think that those people that are doing that to them are better people than them? No. But they're mimicking it and going along with that whole setup of he who has the most money and the most material garbage is the bigger man. Okay. And he's pointing out, you guys are just slaves to somebody else. Where do you get the morality to judge people who have less money than you? Does money, do people with more money have a better character? Is that ever the case? Ever the case? Do they not blaspheme that worthy name which ye are called? If ye fulfill the royal law according to Scripture, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, and you'll do well. So, if you want to do well, love your neighbor as yourself. There you have God's blessing. So when I talk about, as we're going into these times, which are all spooky and scary, and you're going to see all sorts of different news from all over, economy falling apart, COVIDs. Look at what's going on in Australia. They're kicking indoors, and this country's doing that. And it seems like everything is crumbling. It's like, no, if you treat your neighbor as yourself and you have good, truthful discussions between your neighbors and your community and things, God says you're going to be fine. Okay. And that's your support. Okay. People that you can talk to about these things. The person who doesn't want to hear it and is huffing and puffing through their mask, there's no point in really talking to about anything. You might bring it up in happenstance, or you might, like the experience that I had when I was at the store and the person behind the counter asked me to wear a mask. And I said, oh, I'm exempt. And then I just happenstance to say, well, there's a lot of people that have breathing problems and things that they can't wear a mask. And she goes, I know, I'm one of them. And she's sitting there wearing a mask. And I'm like, well, you don't have to do that. You have to wear a mask. Little things you can do. But it's nobody's responsibility to go rip the masks off people's faces. Yeah. But if you have respect to persons, you commit sin and are convinced of the law as transgressors. So right here, if you respect people because of who they are, not what they do, and the faith that they bring forth through their works, as in forwarding truth is what I mean by works. People think in James is that you have to go out and go tract because you got the faith. You have to go out and go start a church or a street preaching movement or you have to go become a missionary because James says faith is dead without works. It's like, no, just support the truth, uphold the truth, be moral. Okay. Recognize inversion, which is everywhere in the world, literally everywhere, and see it for what it is. And when you see people arguing, especially like on the internet, over these inverted topics, whether they call it pro-choice or pro-life, all of these inverted weirdo things, right? Let's don't even be involved in that. It's like, do you support baby murder or no? And then they'll be like, well, that's not really what it is. People with no basis of morality. There's no point in even talking to them. They're clowns. Those are the people you make fun of. Oh, you're pro baby murder. Okay, I got you. That's it. I mean, obviously, it's been around for 50 years now. It's not going to go anywhere, right? What we can do is, like, what's actually happening now with my generation of people is areas and counties and things are making it illegal, at least in their county, to have clinics that do that sort of thing, among other things that they're doing, like gun shops, and where you can go archery range and shooting clubs and all those fine manly things, and kicking out the abortion clinics and saying that they're not going to have them there, right? It doesn't matter what the federal government does. If your local community doesn't want to deal with it, you just ignore it. Okay. That's what's going on. And that's the stuff to pay attention to. And that's the stuff where you're justifying your faith by supporting things like that and being a part of things like that. Doesn't mean go run off and go start a church or street preach on the weekends. If you want to go for it. If you feel called to do that. It just means supporting the truth and recognizing things that are inverted and maybe pointing that out to people or making fun of it. That's the best way to fight it, is to make fun of people like that. They're really, you see people with completely irrational, illogical arguments try to come up with a point, and people getting all involved in me back and forth. You get a lot of that on modern day debate, and it's just like, what utter pointless stuff, The time would be better spent just the one guy making fun of the other one, and at least it'd be entertaining. So it's a sin to put people up on a pedestal who don't deserve it, just for the material wealth or material goods or their place in society, the hierarchical caste. As though, and what it means by that is, though their words would have more weight because they dress in fancy clothes. For whoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. So James in here is saying that everybody is going to hell without Jesus Christ. Okay, so these people out here, the Ruckmanites here, are going to say, oh no, this is works and faith. Yeah, as you need that. This is why James is the Old Testament, even though it's in the New Testament. Well, even in here, James is saying, if you're guilty of one thing, you're guilty of everything. Everyone's going to hell. It doesn't help their argument at all to take James and put it into the Old Testament at all. For he that said, do not commit adultery, said also, do not kill. Now, if thou commit no adultery, yet if thou kill, thou art become a transgressor of the law. Just re-illustrating the point. So speak ye and do so, that they that shall be judged by the law of liberty. For he shall have judgment without mercy, that hath showed no mercy, and mercy rejoiceth. I don't know why I can't say that today. Against judgment. For he shall have judgment without mercy, that hath showed no mercy. So the people who are judging people that don't have any mercy on them, okay, are going to be judged without mercy. What does it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith and have not works? Can faith save him? What does that mean? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, Depart in peace, be ye warm and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things which are needful to the body, what does it profit? Profit. What does it benefit? Who benefits in that case? Who benefits? The person who says depart in peace, do they get to make themselves feel good by saying I blessed the person? Is that what it is? You're saying you don't want to be puffed up. You're doing things for your own benefit, as opposed to actually doing something. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered his son Isaac upon the altar? Well, see, justified there must mean that means he's going to heaven. No, justified there means he was justified by his works, that he had faith. He proved to people on earth that he had faith by doing the act. Everyone is standing around going, where'd Abraham go? Oh, he said he was going up to the mountain, and he had to, sacrifice his kid. He's like, what? He goes, I don't know. I told him not to, but Abraham said he's got to go sacrifice his son because God told him to do it. And he's like, really? And he believes that? Yeah, Abraham really believes that. That's what that was for, justified to people. That his faith. God knows who has faith. Your works are to show other people and to have the faith live through you. When you go out and somebody say something that that's immoral, that's false, that's whatever, that is doing the works of faith. Being not being a respecter of persons and listening to a scientist over what the Bible says or anything like that. Okay, that is justification through works. So yes, when we go back to the poor people again, the poor people destitute in an alleyway, and there's going to be a lot of them, guys. I don't want to be all doom and gloom here, but this old COVID virus thing is funded for the next 5 years by the Federal Reserve and the IMF Bank worldwide. So whatever they choose to do, they're not getting their money cut off for 5 years. All right. So like I said, 25 and 50% of businesses that temporarily close due to this are permanently closing. All right. So just saying. Now, if you're actively, going through your old belongings and see what you can give to people who don't have anything or are destitute, don't have a place to live, you're justifying your faith because you know it's the right thing to do. You know they're legitimately down on their luck, right? Begging in America is hilarious. I realize there are a lot of people, there are some people who, because of their political environment, like in California and things, are forced out onto the streets. Okay. A lot of that stuff is due to their own choices. The bulk of the people that are begging for money are people that beg for a living. Okay. They go out and they are very good actors and they go out and like Minnesota, we had beggars in Minnesota. And it's like, you can go sign up on Minnesota Assistance and make more money than I do. Okay. This is why begging in America is funny. There are a lot of people who are mentally unstable and things that unfortunately are on the streets. And a lot of people that legitimately they don't want to be any part of the system and they're on the street. Okay. But most of the people holding the signs begging for money and they're always there every day at the same intersection, those are people that's their 9-to-5 gig. All right. Now, in the coming future, it's not going to be that way. Coming future is not going to be that way. One of them, you may say unto them, depart in peace, be warmed and filled. Notwithstanding, given those things which are needful to the body, what does it profit? What does it profit? Nothing. It's a way to do nothing. I'm a Christian. It's fine. I mean, the whole idea of like stockpiling ones and zeros in a bank account is so silly. It's completely silly. Instead of stockpiling ones and zeros in a bank account, buy some land so that at least you have something. If you got extra ones and zeros, give them to somebody who needs them. Even so, faith, if it had not works, is dead, being alone. Nobody likes to be alone. Don't be alone. Yea, man, say thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You can't show your faith without works. You can't. You can't show your faith without works. It's sort of like, and everything works this way, okay? It's like you can't show you're American without a birth certificate. You need corresponding documents. Anybody can say they're a Christian. If you look and the person's got a long track record of being part of this organization, that organization, out at the food shelf, doing their thing. You got a Bible box in your front yard. You get your YouTube channel or whatever. You're showing your faith by your work. I mean, it's pretty funny. This is more important today than ever, too, because you got all these churches that are closing down due to COVID because they're all 501c3 and the government told them they all got to close their doors. Who are they working for? The people that pay for them, pay their salaries, and pay to keep the lights on in their building? Are they working for the government? They're working for the government. That's why John MacArthur was all mad, right? That's what you get, though. I mean, these places, they got to have like $1 million buildings for like 50 people that attend the church. How do you think they got their $1 million building? It's because they don't have to pay taxes on anything. Yeah. Get my $1 million building and then just have it for free forever. Oh, it's not free. What do you mean it's not free? I don't get to talk about sodomites anymore, and I can't talk about immorality in America? No. It's part of the 501c3 code thing. You don't get to say who to vote for in the election. You don't get to say any of that. Oh, and if COVID comes out, you got to shut your doors. Yep. That's who they work for. And it's like, I have to laugh at people who think that, America is free or any country is free. It's like, well, America has got debt to somebody, right? A lot of debt. Why are we in these wars all over everywhere? It doesn't seem like the Americans need to be involved in that. Oh, the guys who borrow us money all the time want that. It's the system. It's how it is. And the best you can do is try to disassociate and disengage as much as possible and do your own thing. Thou believest there is one God, thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. But wilt thou now, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac upon the altar? Seest thou how faith wrought with his works, and by works was faith made perfect? This is for the benefit of people. Especially in this world now where you're involved in, the social media, Google, YouTube control 90% of basically the narrative for America. I don't know about other countries, but for America, whatever they decide to put up there. And when you're talking about discernment and things like that, regardless of how small, these news, they can put out news articles that say sodomy is great and everybody loves it and everybody is voting for this. And if you don't agree with it, then you're Adolf Hitler, right? They can put out articles after articles after articles after articles, and nobody is going to believe it, or no one's going to feel that way. But the articles are put out there to make you believe that is the the narrative of the country. That is the barometer. That everybody thinks pedophilia is great, Mambla is great, sex on television is great. All of these weird things, they're all wonderful. LGBTQ, unisex bathrooms for kindergartners. It's all wonderful, and that's what the media would project, but that's not reality. That isn't reality, and that isn't what people think. You would never know that without people acting on it. Without people saying, no, this is garbage. This is garbage. That's garbage. I know what truth is. I know what morality is. And that is demonstrating your faith by just speaking up and going, no, that's wrong. And you'll have a ton of bots that'll come attack you and just don't even bother and engage with them. They're like bots written specifically to get into those kind of arguments. The scripture was fulfilled, which saith, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness. Oh, really? Right in James 2, it says Abraham was saved by believing. Imagine that. Well, was I supposed to put this in the Old Testament somewhere? In between which couple of books was I supposed to put this? You see then by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. Right? Because you cannot prove or demonstrate your faith to other people except by your works. Likewise, also was not Rahab the harlot justified by works when she had received the messengers and had sent them out the other way? Once again, something everybody knew about. God didn't tell her to do that. God didn't tell her to do that. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. So again, the correct reading of James 2, not putting it into the tribulation. We're not going to put it back into the Old Testament, back in Genesis. We're not going to do any of that stuff. Just read it how it's written. Understand you cannot prove your faith to a person without works. Okay. And it all revolves around what I mean by works, and what I believe the Bible means by works is just understanding what's moral and what's true and what's false. And is it good or is it bad? And acknowledging those facts. And that's the way to evangelize. Just by being a moral person and doing the right thing and treating your neighbors good, you are forwarding Christianity, forwarding Christian ideals. You don't need to go preach on the street with a bullhorn. You don't need a YouTube channel. Just call nonsense nonsense. Okay? The COVIDs, call it nonsense. Call it what it is. Everybody already knows it. You don't need to go right into the whole, and then they're going to put chips in our vaccinate us and blah, and the economy is crumbling and be the Alex Jones of it. Just acknowledge that that's probably what's going to happen. But there isn't any control you can do over that. All you can do is take care of yourself. Okay? Take care of yourself and your family and your communities. All right? And looking up the roots and the history of this stuff, like the protocols of the Zion or whatever, it just lets you know where they're coming from and what their ideas are. But they're it's entertainment for the most part, because what they're doing doesn't have any bearing on what the individual person does, unless you want to and choose to engage in it. There are some very active fighters out there who go and put themselves in the position to be in the news for confronting things like Black Lives Matter and Antifa and these guys. And, if people feel called to do that, sure. But, just standing up for the truth is probably good enough. All of these scams, okay, which is what they are. Everything's a scam these days. All of these scams are very dependent on people going along with it. Okay. Just going along. And it happens very innocently, like with wearing a mask at work and stuff like that. It was supposed to be a 2-week flattening of the curve. Now we are 6-8 months later, and here we're still wearing masks, huffing and puffing. The lowest death rates in the last 20 years overall. Suicide is through the roof. Okay, just acknowledge the truth. You're not going to fall over and die of COVIDs if you don't wear a mask. It's the truth. It's a scam. It's a scam. And of course they're not. Of course the news media is not reporting BLM burning down black businesses. Why would they? Why would they? They're not going to report anything that goes against their narrative. You have to understand that all of this media garbage, of course, don't watch television, but all this media garbage is set up to control a narrative. And the only people who are being controlled by that narrative are those people who want to be controlled by that narrative. That's it. You got a whole generation of people that are running away from themselves and their own wickedness who want to wear masks because they know how wicked they are. They know they deny God all this time. They want to deny God because I got my sports car. Hey, I can afford my sports car because I got the Chinaman to make it. Or I got the Mexican to do it. Right? See, I can afford I don't care that my kids got, their college education costs 100 times what it did for me. I don't care. I got my sports car and my 401k, my pension, and my, other relatives, spouse's pension, and my Social Security, and my free prescription meds. I don't care that everything behind me is all laid to waste. I don't care. I got mine. I'm going to put my mask on so no one recognizes me. Let me put my mask on. It makes me feel better to wear a mask. You're not going to get the mask off those people. They're going to fight. They're going to fight to keep that mask. Just saying. So demonstrating of the faith is pointing out truth, pointing out falsehoods. You don't really need to engage in big arguments or anything. Just being aware of things and, oh yeah, family, Planned Parenthood is child murder. It's inversion. Mostly everything is inversion. Yeah. What's getting fun now is they're not even bothering to invert anything. They're just putting it out there as to what it actually is, which is it's not hidden in plain sight. It's just in plain sight now. Yeah. So we'll take a look at chat and then have I been going for 2 hours? I got to quit before 2 hours because otherwise it cuts my video and it doesn't give me the whole video for like 2 weeks. It's really irritating. Nick's got an article to The Guardian up there. Star Steel's got a good resource on COVID. Coronavirus deaths by population. Yeah, the deaths from everything. I did the math myself when it started. About 1 month after the mask thing, we're going to flatten the curve and all that. And about that time, I think on one of the videos I did, I said, well, Trump already said it was a hoax. So I'm not really worried about it. And that's why I support Trump. Not because he's going to be any better than Joe Biden, but because Donald Trump said it was a hoax. And I don't care that he turned around and he's doing the mask thing and he's doing all this other stuff. I don't care. Because he is paid to do that. Okay. He's an actor just like everybody else who's in politics. But he is a straight up enough guy to at certain points, he will call him out. And it was like an off the cuff. As he was moving onto his plane or something, somebody asked him what he thought of Corona, Wuhan or something, whatever. And he said, he says that's a hoax, or I think it's a hoax. I think he said it was a hoax propagated by the Democrats to rig the election or something. Okay. Regardless of what he said about Democrats or anything like that, he said it's a hoax. And right now, the reason that people aren't getting money, right? They're not getting their $600 a week or their $1,200 stimulus or all of it together is because the Democrats are putting through a thing about they want to mail ballots to everybody so they don't have to go to polls. And then they want to give $25 billion to the post office. Now, last I checked, the post office already goes to everybody's house. Okay. Why do they need $25 billion just because you're going to do mail out ballots? So they're rejecting it and fighting everything based on that $25 billion. It really doesn't matter. It's politics. But that's why nobody's gotten, that's why we haven't gotten more money, which are the money that I'm going to be using to get farther off the system and more self-reliant. But that's what it was. And there are people out there who are saying, "Oh, Trump wants to shut down the post office," and this and that's all garbage. That's not what's going on at all. Yeah, and there's nothing political. What I did want to mention when we were talking about this Reformation thing, John MacArthur explains why Christians can't vote Democrat. Trump calls to thank him for taking a stand for religious freedom. There's religion and politics don't go together. There's nothing in the Bible that says you can't vote Democrat. Or there's nothing in the Bible that says you are a conservative Republican. Therefore, this is how you have to vote. That's nonsense. You have to watch out where they're tying. That's a very common thing. To tie some nonsense principle to something to some foundational truth. All right. Just because you read the Bible and believe in Jesus Christ does not mean that you're a conservative Republican. Those words have been so co-opted. I mean, number one, you're definitely not a Republican. You're definitely not a Democrat or any political affiliation. You're a Christian. But even with that, people would typically say conservative means it relies on Christian morality. And it's like, really? Because I don't see people voting like that who get into these places of office. So they're completely co-opted. Are there better candidates than others? It appears so, but I don't know. You don't know how far up the chain all the people are controlled. And the local level, though, I mean, if people do things, what's great about the local level is if you don't want gay people in your town, you don't allow them to build gay bars. And if the majority of people in your town agree with that, then it's not going to happen. It doesn't matter whose rights get trampled on because you don't have a right to be a sodomite in that town. You don't have a right to murder babies in the town. Right? And if you don't like it, go move to LA. Simple as that. Okay? That's what's great about local communities. And it doesn't matter what the federal government says about this, that, or the other thing. It doesn't matter. People believe that they're part of this big universe. We're all just in this universe together. The television tells me what's going on in North Korea and China, and I don't like it. Like it affects you at all. Okay? It doesn't. We're not a global community. We are not. We are families in towns. Okay? It says Christians are to be a light in this world, pointing to Jesus Christ. We do so by our actions and words. Yes. Star Steel X recycling is nonsense. It isn't nonsense, but it is in the way that it's presented in America. Once upon a time, they'd pay you to do that, to recycle your cans, which is what they should be doing now. Because you're working for the recycling company, right? I mean, you're sorting this trash for the recycling company, who is taking free processed resources and then reselling them. So you become the slave in that scenario. And of course, the alternative is it just goes in the trash, in the junk pile, but then the recycling agency will come in and scoop up that junk pile and actually do it themselves or hire convicts to do it. Usually prisons and jails do that kind of thing. I mean, recycling in itself isn't bad. It's just been co-opted to make people feel bad if they don't work as a slave sifting garbage for people. And, I got no problem with recycling. But, in my community, it is the town, I think, that handles all the recycling. So I'm assuming that the money that's profiteered off of recycling goes back into pay town fines, which I'm fine with. You have big multinational corporations involved in garbage and stuff like that, though. And it's like, well, who knows? Maybe all that recycled stuff goes to China. No idea. Sounds like a good idea, though. Star Steel here. One semester costs $700. What's up with the U.S.? 6 months, $700. In the United States, one semester's about 5,000, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing a university, it's like 10 to 15,000 a year is a 4-year university. Like University of Minnesota is like 10 to 15 grand a year. And yeah, you look up, for instance, the generation before us. I looked this up the other day just to see how good they really did have it and how they have nothing to cry or complain about. The house that I grew up in was built in 1971 by my dad. He didn't personally build it, but had it built on a plot of land, 6 acres large. And that was $17,000, both the house and the land. And this is 20 miles from the Twin Cities, in what would effectively be the Stillwater area, the most historical, highest land value area in Minnesota. And he paid $17,000 in 1971, and he didn't actually pay for it. My grandmother did because she had money. 17 grand for 6 acres and a brand new 2,500-ish square foot house. Not a tiny cottage, right? And I mean, obviously, that was to put the house down and to buy the land. There was probably still another 5-10 grand in building a barn, and it used to be a gravel pit, where it's part of gravel territory, so very sandy soil. You had to bring in stuff and put roads in and all that, right? But 17 grand for a 2,000 to 2,500 square foot house, I don't know exactly what it is, on 6 acres, was $17,000 in 1971. That same thing today is $400,000. All right. When I was my father's age, when he bought that property in 2008, that property would still be $350,000. That's a pretty far cry from $17,000. 20 times the amount. And your parents, if you're a Gen Xer, your parents are like, oh, gotta go to school, get a job, go get in a union, go to school. When they went to school, a 4-year education cost $2,800. 1960s, $2,800. $2,800? That's going to get you like 1 year to community college. Maybe. Not including books. I need free medications and my Social Security with my 2 pensions. I need my boat. Put your mask on. If you're like 70 years old right now and you're not a multimillionaire, what did you do your entire life? And this isn't something that I'm just reading up stories on the internet. My dad's 70 or 84. So he's pre-baby boomer. Okay? Talking to him. He says that in his day, a guy could pump gas because he used to have to pump gas. You had full service stations, had to be pumped by somebody else. You could pump gas and have a house and support a family on that. What did you guys do? What did you do for the last 60 years? We never knew any sort of life like that. I don't know. But, of course, everything's been co-opted. And everything gradually falls apart before we have a renaissance. There is no turning around the system at this point. There is disengagement of the system and a return to morality and a return to right and wrong. Not selling all of our jobs to China so we can get cheaper lollipops. Right? It's less convenience for more sovereignty. That's the road we need to be on. And you know what? You're healthier, your mind works better, and you feel better about yourself when you do that, regardless of the amount of money you got. And you're a lot closer to God, especially if you're lucky enough to be able to get out of the cities and get a little plot of land somewhere and do something with it. It's my opinion. Oh, we were talking about COVIDs, and I went off on my tangent. COVIDs, when I did the math, and then I got talking about Trump. When I did the math on COVIDs a month in, it was a 0.006666 repeating mortality rate. So it's less than 0.1% worldwide for the death rate or something. And that was totally fake numbers. That was before it was demonstrably mainstream headline news that the numbers for COVID deaths are fake. So now they're going back in through them, and even with the trumped up numbers and all of this stuff, it has a mortality. The odds you will live through it is 99.9966666 something. So you have a 1/100th% chance after 8 months now of dying of COVID, which generally just means that you died of unknown, and then instead of putting heart failure or old age, they just put COVID. So yeah, it's a 100% false deal. San Marino is the worst with 0.013%. Yeah. Yep. Whoever wants it's the highest percentage of COVIDs is going to be wherever the liberal Democrats, LGBTQ, give me more money, government, give me more money. Those are the people that are going to have really high numbers because it's in their interest to do that. They're trying to do some scams like big town scams in my town. And it's pretty funny. I think I mentioned that, where my wife works, they're like, nobody show up for the COVID test. We're not doing that anymore. We're not doing that anymore. And I'm thinking to myself, well, somebody got sued, right? Because they won't accept liability for this. And they're doing something where it's unlawful they were doing this thing where they were punishing people for not taking the test and just saying no, but they weren't punishing people not taking the test for any other reason. If you said no, you get to stay home for 2 weeks. If you said you had another job or you had something else to do or you're not available during the time of testing, don't worry about it. You're not going to be tested again. Don't worry about it. You're not sent home, whatever. Totally unfair, right? And after wife was home about a week, thing goes out. Okay, we're not doing testing anymore. Do you want to come back to work? And I'm like, oh, somebody got sued, right? And it turns out what happened was they accepted federal money. Everyone who's pushing tests, I don't care where you work, okay? There's free federal money going around now for COVID testing. So what these companies are doing, like her hospital, are accepting the federal dollars to test their employees. Okay. So then that pays for their testing. So there's no cost out of pocket. They get some change and then they test their employees. Well, insurance companies are also getting money from the federal government for any type of COVID testing. So what the hospital is doing is accepting the money for the COVID testing, forcing their employees under punishment of not being able to work for 2 weeks, which is coercion, which is against the law, okay, forcing them to come take the test. And then the people who actually took the test said that they wanted the insurance, their person's personal insurance information on their free mandatory test from the hospital. That's insurance fraud. They're taking the money from the federal government to test their employees. The employee shows up to get tested and writes their insurance information down, and then the hospital bills their insurance company and keeping the money. Fraud. Complete fraud. So, yeah, that's what's going on. Everyone's trying to cash in, guys. So, New York, California, all of these liberal towns, Austin, Texas, I'm sure,
they're going to have all these draconian laws and ideas and mandated, blah, 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 blah. And it's all there just to try and scam you and defraud insurance companies. So what it is. So if something sounds, fishy, like, oh yeah, it's a mandatory test, you got to take this. Number one, who is liable for damages to you in case you get a bloody nose or whatever happens? Okay. Right on the face there, you're not liable. Number two, look for the insurance scam. It's a free test, but put your insurance information down. Oh, yeah, it's free, but put your insurance down. You don't know. Once they have your insurance information, maybe they'll bill for an entire doctor's visit. You don't know. It's fraud. So, yeah, that's what's going on in these places. And definitely, even though there is no death happening from it, the highest reported numbers are just havens for wickedness. So, yeah. Here the government pays funeral costs. Yes. Yeah, and some things are like, I heard that too about paying for funeral costs if you say it's COVID. I don't know. Good. I'd probably do it. I have no way to pay for a funeral. I'm sorry, Dad. You had COVIDs. I don't know. Just one of those things. So I guess that's about what we have for today. Talked a little James too. Talked a little protocols of Z Jews, Z Grabblers. It's linked on. I don't have the. You can get it in any Google search. I think if I link it, I'll just get my account turned off. That's what they like to do when you bring up stuff like this. But don't let the document get you mad. It's over 100 years old. People who wrote it are dead. Just be, understand like, oh yeah, now I see it. Well, once you control the world's money, they can do whatever they kind of want to if you go along with it. Okay, you have to volunteer into these goofy ideas that they have. And of course, Netflix, blatant can be support of pedophilia. And yeah, there's the news. Of course, COVID is still running. Flat Earth stuff, I'm going to be covering SpaceX and just looking at their hilarious cartoons that they have when they're trying to launch rockets. They want to say, Elon Musk is some kind of Tony Stark. It's like that guy didn't build anything. I don't know how you go from investing in PayPal to becoming a space rocket engineer company leader. I don't know. But yeah, it's all just about as real as the rockets. So we'll take another quick look at chat and sign out of here. Blocks of land can cost $250K. Yeah, it's been because you're on an island. And they have the illusion of scarcity. But if China, it's probably that much because China bought all the land in Australia. So whatever you're paying is actually, you have to buy it off the Chinese. And they don't want to get rid of it. Although Australia reportedly is owned by the Queen. But I don't know. China's bought up a lot. They bought up a lot of America too. Apparently the reason we have so many national parks in America is because all of that money for those parks is our debt lien, like that's what we're using as collateral as our own land. So and China definitely owns a piece of that. All right. That's what we got. So everyone be well and God bless and keep your spirits up and all that stuff. And just remember, you're doing your part just by, understanding what's morally good, morally true. Okay. And saying, yeah, that's right. And pointing at, that's wrong. Regardless of what the news says or anything else, because there's a lot of people that support this stuff. That whole thing with the reason that a lot of people would think the same way as a Christian does is because of the whole cuties thing with Netflix. Is Netflix did that specifically to tick off Christians, but it ticked off like everybody. Okay. So everybody thinks like that. And then they come out and then they say they don't want to, they still want the pedo money. So they won't say that's bad. And it's like, oh, well, now you did it. It's time to sell your stock in Netflix if you've got any. This Gillette did that same garbage, right? They did that thing with the razors and they lost $1 billion, and nobody has a reason to buy Gillette razors over anybody else. Oh, you hate men now? You hate 90% of your customers? All right, bye. So that stuff backfires, and it comes out. It comes out and you realize how many regular, old, normal people there are that have a sense of morality that just don't express it. And you'd never know that they'd have a morality, because faith without works is dead, right? Okay. So go be good, moral people and live long and prosper and all that stuff, right? We will be out of here.